My character is one of the members of ODA 595 Special Forces. He's the sniper in the unit, and but these guys are trained to do everything. It's just that his specialty happens to be in marksmanship with the rifle. But like all these guys, they're highly trained at everything. So it's he's just one of the crew. At the beginning of this movie, you see 9/11 take place, and that is when this group gets put into action, and they are the tip of the spear going into Afghanistan. They are the specific group that's chosen of all the special forces groups in Region 5 to go in, to meet up with the Northern Alliance, and to link up with General Dostum, who was the leader at that point of the Northern Alliance, which was basically just a collection of tribes, warring tribes, trying to take over the land in Afghanistan, and while battling each other, and specifically the Taliban at this point. Chris Hemsworth is playing Captain Nelson, and I can't tell you what kind of dedication that I've seen from him. He's here every day. He's usually the first one here. He's the last one here. The guy's in every scene. You don't hear a word from him complaining about the conditions that we're in. As you can see, we're out in the middle of the desert. It's dry. At night, it's very cold. During the day, it gets very hot. We're carrying around 50-plus pounds of gear, and we're going all day for 12 to 16 hours. And you never hear him complain.
There were at least 30,000 Taliban bunkered in between where our guys landed in Afghanistan and Mazar-i-Sharif that our guys had to fight through. So it was our 12 guys, 12 Americans, and sometimes it would be 50 Northern Alliance, sometimes it would be a couple of thousand, but that was usually about it. And at one point, they were outnumbered by over 5,000 to 1 in Tiangi Gap. So one of the almost miracles, the major things that happened is all 12 of the Americans of ODA 595 came home alive. We kind of had a history with Chris, and we just felt like he'd be really good for it. He'd be really good for the part because he's physically commanding, yet he was vulnerable as a character because he had never been to battle before. And he needed to be a leader, yet have weakness. He wanted the movie to have a lot of scope and to have a real kind of point of view to it without it being too stylized or overly stylized, so it didn't lose reality. So I think he was successful in accomplishing that. I think it has a real sense of, it has a great sense of reality, but at the same time, it's visually stunning.
I love the story. It's a story I didn't know about, and then read the book and was fascinated by it and the fact that it was a true story and one that I think a lot of people are unaware of. But the aesthetic of this film, we haven't seen horse-mounted cavalry charges since the First World War. And so to have modern warfare and weaponry and armor on horseback, I think is visually pretty stunning and unique. The film starts September 11, and with the towers being hit and the sort of the chaos that follows, and the uncertainty or the sort of the anxiety that erupted around the world and around America. And we start the film with my character at home with his family, seeing it on TV like a lot of the world did. And basically 3 weeks from there, where the Special Forces team that I'm the captain of land in Afghanistan. They're the first boots on the ground, and we're the response to the 9/11 attacks. I think, you know, for Nelson, there was some sort of subconscious sense of duty, I suppose, that you know, especially when 9/11 happened, that he thought, you know, that could have been any of us, you know, in those buildings or on that plane. That could have been my kid, my wife, my family. So it's my job to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so I think he very quickly justifies what he's doing and has a strong sense of, this is my job and this is what I got to do. And there is a scene in the movie where he does talk to his wife about that and says, "You were in New York 2 weeks ago, that could have been you." So I think there's sort of, that kind of slams it home for him. He commands, you know, respect as soon as he walks into a room. You know, not him personally, but his energy, you know. He so that's not hard to sort of follow him and kind of want to look up to him, and I welcome any sort of advice from him. It was awesome because we had, none of us really knew each other. Some of the guys did. I certainly didn't. And so we had, I think, 3 weeks of military class where it was, you know, as it sounds, we were in a room with a blackboard and a piece of chalk, you know, listening to the experts kind of tell us about the Special Forces and about, you know, about this particular mission and so on. And that was, you know, invaluable. You know, I think for also the being together and then doing that and then doing the weapons training and the physical training, the movement drills help cement us as a unit.
In case of my character, which is the wife of like the captain, was Mitch Nelson. So you have to say bye to the person you love the most, and not knowing exactly that, like how long will be if they want to come back, because knowing like, are you going to just fight these people who just like took down the you know, the Twin Towers? So you are, like, as a family, you are like totally shocked and with fear, but she knew that she married a soldier, yeah, so she knew that these things could happen. For us, it was just playing what we are, so it was more easy. We didn't have to prepare that much, but it was fun because we were just going through the lines again and again, and Chris is like really, really hard worker, so he's like, no, do it again, and again, let's do it again. So sometimes we were like, just before bed, and we're lying in bed, and one of the scenes is that moment, I was like, let's do this scene, come on. I'm like, seriously? He's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So that I feel really comfortable. So when it was the day that we have to shoot, it was just like totally easy. It creates a bond between the wives, you know, because they're going through the same thing and the same feeling. So you see it, and they get together, and they're just trying to know what's going on, and they get together to see the news. If it's just like something that comes, that they can give like just a tiny thing that will get that, oh yeah, they're talking about them, I think they're them, but you don't know because there were no names, nothing. So that's really important, I think, because it creates like that special bond between all of them. The whole story, as we told, like we said before, you know, how these two countries are like different worlds, and how they get together against our enemies, and all the feelings of the wives and the family of the soldiers. Then so it's very emotional. I think it has like a lot of emotional moments, and it's just a story to feel like you're proud of the U.S. Army.
Name's John Mulholland. I'm a career Army Special Forces officer. Began as a RTC student at Furman University, commissioned as an infantry officer, and 1979, 1983, graduated from the Special Forces course. Something I always wanted to be was a Special Forces soldier, known as the Green Berets, and have spent my life in that career field, in the Special Operations career field, and have the benefit to serve and command at every level from in a detachment up through Commanding General of Army Special Operations Command and a number of our joint Special Operations Commands. So a career in our nation's Special Operations community. We were, all of us, myself included, were very positively, I don't want to say surprised, but pleased to see how a movie that's made for entertainment purposes, primarily, also did a very admirable job of capturing what a Special Forces A-team is and how it works in the field with its indigenous forces. In this case, of course, capturing the work of one of our A-teams, ODA 595, in the early days of Operation Enduring Freedom in the immediate aftermath of the attacks on 9/11. Mark's team certainly met that standard. They met that standard fundamentally of confidence that I had, that they understood the mission, they understood the terrible challenges and risks of the mission, and the risks were extraordinarily high because we had very limited resources and assets at that time. And therefore I felt as comfortable as I was ever going to feel. I can't say I ever felt truly comfortable with putting those teams in those helicopters and putting them into harm's way in Afghanistan, because once they were on the ground, my ability to meaningfully help them in a timely manner, much different than we can do today, was really, really limited. So they basically met that standard of confidence that I needed to have, that I could trust these men to do what needed to be done to protect themselves, save their own lives, and yet be successful with the mission. Task Force Dagger was a joint and to some degree interagency Special Operations Task Force that was formed around the nucleus of an Army Special Forces group, in this case the 5th Special Forces Group, that was charged with the mission of destroying the Taliban regime and making Afghanistan unpalatable, unsafe for al-Qaida to remain. I hope they walk away with a better appreciation for what Army Special Forces does, because it is really advanced warfare. It's a thinking man's game to go in, a small group of men, into enemy country with people you've never worked with before and work magic with them. That's one, and it does indeed require a special breed of man to do that, or woman. I hope they walk away with an appreciation for what's possible when we as a nation work together.
This is it's the kind of movie that made me want to be an actor when I was a kid. This is awesome. True story. The action, the reality of what this was about, what the guys were doing, sacrificing, this moment in history for us. I mean, everybody knows where they were at when, they woke up to the news of 9/11 and then just kind of the magnitude of this story. I was like, yeah, I got to do this. I got to do this. My character, Coffers, he's described as a bit of, he's the team complainer, the smart ass. It's kind of fun to play with because you get away with saying whatever the hell you want, and it kind of works. Yeah, I mean, and these things have sort of evolved as well as with the script and how we're shooting things and the story. But yeah, these guys they're all good at everything. Some specialize, obviously, in certain things, but I mean that's the nature of a group like this. In the Special Forces, that every one of them knows how to do everything. Certain guys specialize in certain things, but these guys they loved each other. They sacrificed for one another. They would die for one another, and at the same time, they had no problem making fun of one another. What I want people to take away from this is how wonderful these people are, how they're fighting for their lives and their way of life, and for themselves, their family, their future generations, and what they did and the relationship between the American military and the Afghani people and Dostum and the Northern Alliance, and how they work together, and they still are, and in a way, it's a pretty incredible story. I think, I mean, we're kind of the face of it, and the story is being told about this group of special forces guys, but it's about to me, it's about the Afghani people, the Northern Alliance that we allied with, and that's the story, I think.
It's the 21st century. You don't think that our military has to get on horses. There are a lot of other small vehicles they could be riding, and ATVs and all kinds of different things. But when you go into Afghanistan in these mountain passes, that's the way you get around, either on mules or on horses. So they had to adapt. And that's what's so interesting about the Special Forces. There are peacekeepers. They try to link up with the indigenous people and talk to them and say, we're not here to invade your country, we're here to help you. And that's what's so great about them. That's how they're trained. It's not only they're intelligent and deadly. Michael Pena plays Diller. He's somebody that brings levity to our movie. And, you know, it's a kind of thing that most professional men who go into combat always have somebody who adds the gallows humor. And Michael had the great ad-libs to bring to our film. And you know, it's interesting, even though it's a picture about combat and war, there's a lot of fun in the movie. There's a lot of levity. There's a lot of laughs, which I think audiences love. When we previewed the movie, you can't imagine how many laughs we had. Navid, we looked at his work. He's a wonderful actor. He was an American Sniper. He's played some fantastic characters, both on television and in movies. And he was so passionate about making this film. He actually contacted the Afghan community in where we were filming and got a lot of them to become extras and were actors in the film. So a lot of the Afghans in the movie are actually from Afghanistan, and they became actors for us. Chris, I've been chasing for 4 or 5 years to play this role. I would call his agent all the time. Whenever I saw him and sat down with him, I talked about 12 Strong and what a wonderful part it would be for him. And he's such an iconic actor. And the fact that he's coming off Thor, which is a very successful film right now, women love him. He's got the right kind of build and looks like a great American soldier. So we're very fortunate that he agreed to do the part. And he's very passionate about it. There's a camaraderie that built between these guys when they got into battle, and they show how fierce the American fighters are and how fierce these deadly special forces are. But they're also well-versed, and they try to take on the culture of the people. They don't disrespect them. So that's something really special on how they're trained. And it's the first movie about the Green Beret Special Forces since John Wayne, many, many years ago. A lot of other branches of the military get the glory. But these young men were on the ground and did an amazing job for our country. And the reason they do it is they love their families and they love their country, and they want to make sure their families are safe. And they're willing to put their life on the line to protect our country and their families. These 12 men and this Special Forces unit will never be forgotten. It's a little-known incident that there's a statue at Ground Zero of these men, of their accomplishments, that when we had preview audiences, they had no idea that this ever happened. Even though that statue was standing there, nobody knew about it. And the kids started talking about, I want to research this. I want to look this up. Did this really happen?
Seeing the film in which Chris Hemsworth portrays me and the other actors that portray our team members was pretty surreal. Humbled that a movie has been made about our team's mission. We're honored that it's being portrayed, and it portrays the spirit of a U.S. Army Special Forces team in that post 9/11 period. It means a lot to our families that that mission is finally being brought more into the public light. I think America is going to enjoy this film. It means a lot also to the Afghan people, because it sheds some light on, most definitely, onto the service and sacrifice that the Afghans themselves have had in that conflict.
You got to remember, there hasn't been a Special Forces movie made this way since the Green Berets in 1968. It's been a while. We've had our Rambos, we've had a few others, but this movie portrays an SF team as they should be portrayed in the battlefield, and going through all the dynamics and adapting to situations was superb. He's fantastic. He's me. Actually, he was very good, and he was great to talk to on the set. He asked me quite a few questions about how I interacted with the team and the team dynamics as a whole. I am truly glad that he was the guy that portrayed me. His actions at certain parts actually mirrored mine.
Within a very short period of time, I want to say by like the 14th of September, I was getting a phone call from our command informing me that I was going to be put back on that team. So we knew Special Forces was going to play some role. We did not yet know what role our team was going to specifically play.
First thing we need is we need a 12-man team, because at that time we had 8 men. And so we needed to be plussed up to 12. And the first thing was to go reach out and get the guys that we needed to replace guys that we'd just lost. And we'd actually requested Mark come back to the team, which that was a little bit of a fight, but we said, hey, he's been on the team for 2 years. Why would you give me somebody else? He already knows the team. I don't have to sit here and second guess someone. So luckily for us, he was, because he rode the horses.
Our commander at the time, Colonel John Mulholland, who is portrayed in the film, had to risk our lives, and we understood that and accepted that, to conduct this mission. They needed information. The entire U.S. government needed information. And so the CIA team and our Special Forces team and some others were sent into that in that first wave of teams that had to get on the ground and figure things out. And they trusted us to sort it out and report what could be done and what the circumstances and situation was on the ground with the Afghan allies, with the local population, and with the enemy, the Taliban and al-Qaida forces. Our mission statement was to conduct unconventional warfare in support of General Abdul Rashid Dostum and render our geographical area free and clear of terrorist and Taliban activity. Our area that we were responsible for, because the Army likes to draw boundaries and say, this is your play box, our area was the entire country. We learned partway through our mission that our daily situation reports that were being sent out were being read at the highest levels of our national command. They were being read by the President. They were being read all the way up through the chain of command by the Secretary of Defense. We recognized when we learned that we had the weight of America's foreign policy in our rucksacks. And in working closely with the CIA counterparts on the team, we were sharing information right there. It was very, just an incredible spirit of cooperation and camaraderie in working with our CIA partners and our Afghan allies.
Which is in the movie. They actually have that in the movie, and that's superb. I'm so glad they actually put that piece in there.
A Special Forces wife is a very special lady. They are warriors in their own right. They keep in the case of our wives and our team, they are very close. There isn't a chain of command in the wives group, but they support each other and they are there to assist each other with any number of normal day-to-day kind of activities that come up. My wife went in for her 8th month checkup, and the baby was high. It was a high-risk pregnancy, and the doctor told her, "You're having this baby today, within 2 hours." And my wife called the other team wives, and they came in, and they were, I think, just about every team wife was present in that delivery room to help my wife, to help my 3- and 4-year-old sons, until family members could come in to further aid.
Yeah, my wife, Michelle, was right there with her the entire time, holding her hands. Here we are. These horses show up. Alpha team gets them, the alpha element. And now I'm watching 6 guys get on these horses and try to ride away and follow General Dostum. Of course, Mark is doubling back, trying to get the guys to go straight. So some of the other guys are holding their reins like this and going off to the right and left.
You know, one other sergeant on the team had ridden, horses before in high school a little bit, but it had been years since he had ridden. Most of the training that the guys had was mom and dad took them, to the grocery store, threw some quarters in a little horse and went back and forth. Or maybe they had ridden at a county fair or something, ridden the little ponies in a circle or something. Doesn't quite exactly prepare you for what these guys were doing. For me, in the context of that mission, the bravery of the Afghans stands out. I witnessed them charging on horseback into tank and artillery fire, like something out of World War I, with the charge of the Light Brigade or something. But they would charge and flank armored vehicles and take them out before they could fight, receive heavy casualties themselves. Just the bravery of our Afghan allies is what stands out in my mind about our mission. The bravery of our sergeants in our team, as I talked about earlier, just the incredible things that I saw them do. No one wanted to let our teammates down.
Yeah, I'll never know 11 braver men in my lifetime. And the sacrifice during that time, during that campaign, and everything they gave to win, to do the best they could for us, as we asked them.
Diller is one of the older guys, that gets called up on a mission. He's been training his entire life to do it, and they, thank God that he just wants to help. As soon as 9/11 comes, it was a different tactic formed. I think it was by Rumsfeld and George W. Bush, where they spent special armed forces into Afghanistan instead of just troops by numbers. Going to attack, because it was an unspecified terrain, and there were so many variables that they thought it would be better for just like the elite soldiers to go in and tactically just call in airstrikes. But even just getting to the point where you can communicate was tough, and I think that's what this movie's about. He's a good buddy of mine now. You're right. He's like this really tall dude. You know what I mean? Like, he's a good-looking dude. And he's got this voice. Yeah, you get out there, mate. Yeah. That guy. But it works. For him. Good luck. Maybe this is his first thing. Maybe he'll do some better work or something. You know what I mean? It looks awesome. It looks grand. It looks like a really big experience, which is what you want, for, when any of your audience, you want them to go through like a visceral experience and just like challenge them visually as well. This thing can sometimes inspire, like, I hope, like tolerance and acceptance and understanding, that there are Afghanis and Muslims out there and, Christians or whatever, like they all fight together against terrorism, and it's about really about like, some of the Afghans and, with the Northern Alliance and these Americans coming together and fighting, and with their mind is evil. And to me, evil is like, evil is having, like, obviously evil intentions or bad actions done to a person of goodwill, and so I do think that people get, I hope that they're entertained, but I do hope that they get a little bit of understanding.
These guys, they knew how to handle an incredibly complex situation, to have the wits about you to be able to go to a whole nother culture, a whole nother civilization, and try and bridge the gap. It's one thing to go and just drop a bunch of bombs on people and then turn around and go home, but to actually go into another country and try and understand the culture and understand the people and the history. My character's been in the service for a long time, and starting to think that maybe it'd be a good time to retire and spend time with the family, and but then 9/11 happens, and he cannot turn his back from that, even though there's probably a voice in his head saying, I know I'm probably past my prime, but I still have something to offer, and I should go. So, one last mission. Chris is, I can't imagine someone else doing this part. He has this perfect mixture of authority, but also you buy that he's maybe not had a ton of experience and is trying to figure this out as he goes, and that he has his own fears and anxieties about it, and yet he's able to capture the captain quality very well. And he's just a very sweet man and a lot of fun to be with, a lot of fun to work with. The people are the interesting ones. The person that I was playing fascinated me more. And the fact that these two wildly different groups of people were able to find harmony, come together to accomplish a singular objective, that's good. To see people cooperating and understanding, and that's the positive that I want to get out there. It's an important story. It's an important story. I'm not sure how it'll affect people. I think it'll affect different people differently depending on, you have family in the military, what your own background is. But, there's a statue dedicated to these guys at Ground Zero. And I live in New York City, and I'm always very moved when I see that statue now, and I feel very fortunate that I know what it is and why it's there and who those guys were. And I think that's important. I think everyone should know.
Jerry actually met Nicolai many years ago, and Nicolai had done some development work on the screenplay. And when we became interested in the film and came on board to make the film, we met Nicolai, and he absolutely blew us away. His visual presentation, his research, he's an incredible, visual filmmaker. I think that's very important for audiences when you see a film like this, and especially a military film or a war film, that you also get to see their home life and what it's like for these guys to leave their families, to make this sacrifice. And, you know, we really tried to show the home life, especially in the beginning, and the wives in a very real way, and show sort of the different emotions that these women may have. Elsa's an incredible actress, and you know, I think there's nothing better than, of course, having the real chemistry of Chris and his wife. And she's beautiful on film, and you can really feel their passion and their love, and she gives a very real portrayal. This film was very ambitious. It was the shooting days were limited, so these guys really never left the set, both the Afghan actors and the American soldiers. And you know, they all stayed together in the same hotels. They trained together. They work out together. They went through a boot camp together, for the 2 weeks leading up to the film. So they really formed an incredible camaraderie, which I think shows on film.
He's very westernized. He's about education. He's about pushing, advancing his people, and especially because his tribe is very small in Afghanistan. And he's the man who, without him, I don't think that the American soldiers would have been able to achieve their goal. He was able to transform into this military the personality, transform into the captain, into someone who is really dealing with all the problems. He's right there. He's solving the problems. He's the thing about him is that I'll be a couple of scenes. You will see the emotion boiling from inside out. And that's what I like about his work. It's not from outside. He's not just putting a face and acting it. He's feeling it. Oh my gosh, the whole cast is fantastic. I mean, I cannot pick. Oh my gosh, I don't know. You're putting. I cannot pick and choose and say who's this, who's that. I mean, I saw the teaser. Michael Shannon. Oh my gosh, unbelievable! This guy. You just look at his face. The things that's happening behind his eyes. It was beautiful, just beautiful. The film is a teeny tiny window into the world, and that we know or knew nothing about it. And now, even I was surprised hearing some of these stories, and I think we can. I just hope that we can share that with our audience. Is for them to decide. I mean, I'm nobody to tell them what to think. I just hope that they start thinking. That's it.
The fact that it's been declassified recently is important because it's a story people really weren't aware of. No one had any idea this happened, myself included. Reading the script for the first time was incredible because I just couldn't believe that it was true. When you hear about these guys riding into battle on horsebacks against tanks and rocket launchers, it just sounds so surreal. But amazing enough, that's exactly what happened. Our guys were members of the elite Army Special Forces, formerly known as Green Beret. And their mission was unique because they were the first 12 soldiers on the ground in Afghanistan. When they arrived, they found themselves outnumbered 5,000 to 1 by the enemy and were constant at risk of getting captured because of the large bounty the Taliban had placed on their heads. In addition, they also had to help unify various warring factions of the Northern Alliance who were still using horses to ride into combat against missile launchers and T-72 tanks. I mean, the fact that every member of that special forces team made it home alive is nothing short of a miracle. One of the things that really stood out about these specific soldiers is that they were all volunteers for the mission. 9/11 was completely unexpected, and the U.S. wasn't prepared for any sort of a military conflict in that region. Obviously, that meant that the first soldiers sent into the country would be operating without much intel or much support, making it near impossible to know exactly what they would encounter once they arrived on the ground. Knowing all this and still choosing to leave their families behind and go fight for the safety of their country is really what makes these men great heroes. Task Force Dagger was the first step in America's fight against the Taliban in Afghanistan right after 9/11. The small special forces team was to link up with a local warlord. His name is General Rashid Dostum, who was the leader of the Northern Alliance. Our special forces guys was there to provide them with air support and an assistant mainly. And one of their missions was to defeat the Taliban, who was occupying the city of Mazar-i-Sharif at the time, and also trying to regain control of the region in an attempt to stabilize the country. You know, it's always a challenge to accurately portray a great leader like Captain Nelson. But Chris Hemsworth has such a quiet strength and confidence that his work in this particular role felt so natural to him. And I have to say, you know, it's such a true pleasure to work with such a professional. He's always so committed, and it was a real true privilege to work with him. Michael Shannon is really a unique actor, and the way he was able to embody Spencer as his wise, battle-hardened warrior was really amazing. I mean, the guy is just such an incredible actor.
I have a unique connection to this film and to this story. I had the privilege of serving with 3rd Battalion, 5th Special Forces Group in November of 2001 in Mazar-i-Sharif, Afghanistan. I was at Central Command at the time, and I was sent over, even though I'm a Marine. They sent me over to join up with these guys, and I ended up working on the command element for Lieutenant Colonel Max Bowers. So for a while there, Colonel Bowers was my boss. I was a young captain at the time, and like I said, I had the privilege of working with this outstanding unit and helping in whatever way I could with their mission on the ground once we were in Mazar-i-Sharif. Now, I wasn't a gunslinger like these guys, but it was a privilege to serve with them nonetheless. So now it's kind of interesting because I've come full circle in the sense that I'm playing my old boss. And it's not very often you get to play your old boss from 15 years ago on the big screen. So it was quite an honor. I was thrilled because I knew of the story. I read Doug's book. I thought very highly of it. I'm intimately familiar with the story because, like I said, I got there about a month after they had completed their mission. So I got to meet a lot of the guys in person and hear the stories firsthand from them. So I felt like I was connected to the unit. So when I got the call, I was thrilled to death. Not to mention, I retired in real life as a lieutenant colonel, and so to play a lieutenant colonel on screen seemed pretty cool. Most of my scenes, if not all of them, have been with Michael Shannon and Chris Hemsworth, and amazing guys. Fun individuals that you enjoy hanging out, having a conversation with, and then such a joy to watch them act, watch them work, watch them, how much they care. That's very inspiring. They really do care. They want to get it right. They want to get the dialogue right. They want to get the words, and they want to get the emotion, and they take the time to do it right, and it's been a pleasure to watch that. And I know it's going to mean a lot to the men who served over there. This is an important story to tell because it shows America's capability and our ability to react, to seize the initiative, to take action. These guys are training all year. When you're sleeping right now, tonight, wherever you are, you're going to go to bed tonight, know that there's somebody out there training and preparing for that worst case scenario. And when that worst case scenario happens, these guys are ready. They're ready to go. You don't have to spend months or years training. They're ready now. and their professionalism and the fact that they take their mission and they say goodbye to their families and they go over and they risk life and limb for us.
My character's name is Vern Michaels. He's one of the 12 Special Forces guys who goes over to Afghanistan with this group of people we're portraying in the film. Obviously based on a true story, so these guys really did it. So it was pretty exciting for me to have the opportunity to play one of these characters. Captain Nelson is, I think, like any of these captains and leaders in the military, they're just doing their job. They know how to do their job. They do it well, and I don't think any of them really seek glory for it. And I think for us, we were really lucky to find Chris Hemsworth to play this role because they, as an individual, that's kind of who he is. I'm really impressed with him as an individual. He's a very humble guy, but all about his work and all about business, and it's really a good match, from a casting standpoint. The chief warrant officer is always typically the older guy, the older statesman, the wiser guy who has just made a career out of that position. The captains tend to rotate more, and therefore they're normally younger. So the way we have it, fortunately for us, we have a great, the elder statesman. We have Michael Shannon playing Spencer, and then we have Chris Hemsworth being the younger captain, and it could not have worked out more perfectly in probably the way the book was written and the script was written. We got these two guys to do it, and it was such a perfect dynamic. For Trevante, we explored a lot of different ideas, and he really responded to this Milo character, and he's got a great arc. The guy has sort of a little Afghan counterpart, a little boy that kind of it's very touching and endearing, and we just thought he's such a great actor, and we thought he'd be perfect to be that counterpart in that relationship. I love war movies with sincerity and integrity, and not just war movies to see things blow up. And he has all of that. He wants to do all of that, and he's done all of that so far. So that to me is what spoke volumes, because you want to see the humanity, you want to see the sincerity, and the reality of war. It's not always pretty, and it's not always perfect, and he understood all that from the beginning, and that's what spoke to me when he presented his ideas.
It's interesting that the Americans went in not to conquer, but to fight alongside the Afghanis. They felt like the Taliban had been the invaders. The Taliban had taken over a country, and they went in to fight alongside the people of Afghanistan, the tribal leaders of Afghanistan, to take their country back. He's certainly a legend in the business. Movies that he touches or is a part of are very successful. He's had one of the most prolific careers in the industry, spanning for a number of decades now. But he's a very engaged, very hands-on producer who brings a lot of experience, a lot of great ideas, and his energy is boundless. And so it's been great. We've been excited to learn from him, to be partners with him, and this has been a really exciting project. And I'll say, to be honest with you, I don't know a lot of producers anymore that are their own brand, like Bruckheimer is. Chris is a very talented actor. He's he comes off as a strong leader, and we were looking for someone that men would follow. And I think he is that kind of guy. He's that kind of actor, certainly. And so we we're looking for guys that felt like, you know, they could be special forces guys, and in these situations would also be the types of guys that raise their hand to say, "Put me in. We want to be a part of it." Shannon has a wisdom. He's a great, very talented actor. I mean, certainly every year he's an actor that gets some kind of nomination. He chooses material well, but he's also just a guy that could do no wrong on camera. Anything he decides to do, it works. It's interesting, and you just want to watch him.
This is a story that first and foremost is true, and I mean, on the more selfish level, I always wanted to play a soldier at the very least, and then, you know, obviously knowing that Chris Hemsworth and Michael Shannon were attached to the people that I really look up to in the industry, you know, and then Jerry Bruckheimer, it was a no-brainer, and then again reading the script and it being so, you know, so visceral, it was a no-brainer. Ben Milo is Chicago bred. He's the demo man. He's the weapons guy with a heart of gold. You know, he's the big burly man, but then underneath, obviously, you know, he has this tender spot, and you see that with his relationship with one of the kids and you know, and the indigenous kids, and yeah, man, he's just the guy that everybody looks to for that, you know, that heartwarming moment. Captain Nelson and Chief Warrant Officer Spencer, those two cats. The real life cats flew out, and they spent quite a bit of time with us to kind of help us get a sense of what the story was. And they actually brought a piece of the Twin Towers, and that was just the most powerful moment on set, when he brought a piece of the Twin Towers and we all just passed it around, and it was just really a moment where it just set in. Like, this is, like, you know, like, obviously we know history, we knew this happened and it affected us, but again, to physically, like, feel something that was just, it was here, it was tangible, like, it just shocked your system, you know? It brought all those emotions back, so that was very valuable. He's a very visual director, which is incredible. And so the first meeting I had with him, Riley, he was very, like, emphatic about, you know, explosions and the colors and the vibrance of the war and the blood and, like, all these very visual things. And you know, and obviously telling the story the way it was, but staying as true to the real story and the real material as possible, which is, you know, the most important thing to me. Sticking to the book as best we can to tell these people's story, the true story of true human beings, you know. And he was really emphatic about that, and for me, that was everything, because, you know, again, if you're telling the true story, tell it truthfully, you know.
I play Colonel Mulholland. He is an officer that is in country, and you see him at a very key moment in the film when he really explains to the group, one of the 6 groups, the 6 teams that are all trying to be the one to get picked to go on this mission, and the final group that he sees is with Michael Shannon and Chris Hemsworth, and he's lets them know that they're the ones going in. He's such a, you know, his commitment to excellence is so great in everything that he does, that, you know, when the circumstances happen, and if there's a role and I'm right for it, I feel like that's when they align. And I you know, I'm ever appreciative that, you know, he considers me for that stuff. And you know, I've said it a million times. If I've said it once, it's a real pleasure to be on a Bruckheimer production. You know, it is a commitment to excellence and soup to nuts, and it's just a lot of fun to be around. Big fan of Chris's, especially after Rush, and you know, I thought he was quite excellent in that film, and others, and you know, and Michael Michael's somebody that I don't think there's anything that Michael does that I don't think is great. So, you know, not only was it, you know, great to meet the gentlemen today, but to, you know, to work in these scenes together with them was pretty special.